Hello, I'm Robert McConnell at Aventons Bikes, and thank you all for joining us today for Coffee and Go. So, Coffee and Go with Aventon is a live stream event designed to give Aventon riders direct access to our company. And it's also an opportunity for us to share insights and announcements about what is happening with us and our bikes. So, today I will be interviewing Steve, who is the owner of Jolt Bike in Waltersburg, Pennsylvania. So we'll be learning more about Jolt Bike and how it got started, along with other community-driven activities that Steve has planned for his shop. We'll also be talking about the pros and cons of cadence and torque sensors, and we'll have a live Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please drop them into the comment section, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of the show. So remember, drop those in the comments section, please. So feel free to grab a cup of coffee and sit back wherever you are, and let's get started. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to learn more about Jolt Bike and learn about the exciting things that you have planned for your shop. So first, how long have you been working at Jolt Bike, and what inspired you to take the bike shop business career path?
Well, so my brothers, I have two brothers, and we mountain bike raced most of our life. And I went to school, electrical engineering, but I've always loved mountain bikes. So I started building e-bikes about 10 years ago, just taking fat tire cog burns. They are actually cog burns. I think they're made in California. They were one of the first camo fat tires, and converting them over and just having fun. And then I started a marketing company in the outdoor industry, and e-bikes, it's kind of hilarious. I say e-bikes were the keywords were going like this on Google search. And I was like, man, I need to get away from the computer and open up an e-bike shop. So it's been about since 2019. We opened, I think, March of 2020, kind of when everything went crazy, but It was perfect timing also. And we have moved twice so far. We ran out of space.
Wow.
I didn't understand the space requirements right off the beginning, because I was more of an e-bike rider or a mountain bike rider than I was a shop owner. And we'll be moving a third time here soon. So a little baptism by fire, but sometimes you're better at it when you come in, cold instead of knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what helped you choose Waltersburg as your new location?
So Waltersburg is really funny. We're in Uniontown, Pennsylvania. So we're about 25 minutes south of Pittsburgh. Uniontown's much more known, but there's the first shop was in Uniontown in my old marketing office. We moved closer to my home, actually, but we had 20 acres here. And there's literally 200 yards on Route 51 south of Pittsburgh that is called Waltersburg. And I just happened to be in that 200 yards. Wow. I didn't even know it was called Waltersburg, and I've lived down here 15 years. So Waltersburg sounds like I have no clue where that's at, but it's really Uniontown, Pennsylvania. It's right on I can see it. So only the land part, because we have a nice 3-acre yard in the front. So gravel parking lots, downtown was tough for people. Most of our clients are 65 years and older. Unbeknownst to me, I thought it was going to be a lot of like my guys hucking off of rocks and flipping through the woods as fast as you can. It's a lot of older folks that are getting back on bikes because they got that insurance plan. They got the electric motor. But then everyone wanted to ride more, and we had a gravel lot. So I looked for a place with a nice big field. We paved the parking lot, and it's so much easier for you to make a decision when they can ride the bike and not feel like they're going to fall over, because sometimes they're just not, they haven't been on a bike for a while.
Right.
So that's why this location was chosen, basically because of the property.
Wow. That's awesome. Do you only sell e-bikes or analog bikes also?
So we wanted to just do So I repair everything, but we only sell electric bikes. Let me rephrase that, electric devices. So most of everything's electric bikes. We do, we work with Cake. So we got Cake, they're dirt bikes, they're road bikes, they're utility vehicles. We have a lot of scooters. We do one wheels. I mean, I'd be crazy if I didn't do one wheels. And then we have a couple of scooters that are larger. They're like almost the size of not a side-by-side, like an ATV, but they're being used now for trail maintenance. And they're called Torvi. They're used for trail maintenance, for getting people out of like when someone gets hurt on the Yacht, when they're whitewater rafting, or we have the Gap Trail, the Great Allegheny Passage, which is pretty much world known. So about 400 miles of trail. So they're using them to get people out, or safety, or EMS, or I got a bike gets broke down and, they're older, they're bringing them out of the woods with it. So we're doing some alternative type stuff for trail maintenance also.
Yeah, when I was checking out information on your shop and looking at where you're located on your website, there was a link for like all the trails and stuff in your area, and I was like, wow, the one that goes all the way down to DC, and there's like trails everywhere. It seems like it looks like a really good riding area.
It is super. I mean, we used to do a lot of the 24-hour races at Seven Springs and the ski resorts, and that kind of, I don't know, you probably saw it too. Like mountain biking had its little dip there for a while, and it seems like bikes. I say mountain biking, we were on full suspension bikes, but biking kind of dove off, and it's going back up. So everyone's opened their trails back up. But we have an immense amount of railroad beds that are sitting there dormant. So they're starting to reclaim them. I think they're federal property anyways. I'm not really sure how much reclaiming they need, but they're starting to reclaim them all. And they're going to put in, I think, 300 to 400 more miles of trails interlinking West Virginia, Ohio, Gap Trail. Wow. And I think it's becoming so big in PA that people are starting to buy properties along the trails because they want to do bed and breakfasts and things and charging stations. That's why I've been working on a project called Charge It, with putting charging stations up different places, because not always, people don't understand how much a bike, in the beginning, how much they'll use of their battery. So if that'd be nice, they could charge every 20 miles and maybe eat there,
right?
Get their bike and then keep on going and do more of the trail instead of just turning around after halfway through.
Take a little break. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming.
That's awesome. Well, one of the questions that I had for you was about test rides, and you kind of touched on that, how nice it is that your customers can get on the bike and kind of move around in an open area. To expand on that, I kind of heard a rumor that you might be in the process of building an e-bike park or something like that. Is there any truth to that?
We are. So the 20 acres we had here, only about 5 of it was usable. A lot of it was up in the woods. So there's just been a single track, but that's not very, it's not very smart to have people the demo bike on a single track. So out of nowhere, there's a place called Springdale. It is an old golf course, and it's a 400-acre old historic place. It was a Thompson estate, and they did a lot of the cool stuff back in the days and started a lot of the banks. The place has been dormant for a long time, and we've always looked at it, but it was sort of like a pipe dream type thing. So we stopped by and ended up talking to some of the people. We ended up purchasing it out of nowhere. This came like within 3 months, we ended up owning this place. But the golf course is perfect. So there's 400 and some acres. The golf course is 100 acres itself with a nice, it's a log clubhouse. So as of yesterday, we started digging and we are adding on to the clubhouse. Wow. And most of the golf cart, we're not going to bring back a golf course because I don't want to maintain that much grass or what it takes to do a golf course.
Yeah.
Because I was a bad golfer, so I know what would happen to the course. But we're going to use a lot of the golf cart paths for an e-bike park. So we'll do more of like a fitness leisure type thing where people can come, they can rent bikes on site, rent bike off site, or ride for the day or half a day, hang out, break the laptop out, work, go ride a little bit. And we're hoping to have some food and some other things there. And then in the other part of the property, we're going to probably put a single track in. That'll be second phase of that, and do more mountain bike races, try to piggyback off of some of the e-bike races that are trying to be mixed in with a lot of the motocross ATV stuff. Wow. They fall to the background. So I'm hoping we can do e-bike races and have them just e-bike races so they don't get lost in the shuffle. But we just started. Yeah, we just started. So hoping, I don't want to move shops again. It's the most painful process ever when you have most of the bikes built. But end of May, we're hoping we start moving some stuff over there and slowly bringing it up. And maybe peak season, but I think it's going to be awesome for the consumer to try bikes or rent bikes, and they'll really get to know what they want to buy instead of being hasty just from pictures.
That's awesome. The next question I have kind of veers off into the technical section, but it kind of ties in with having all that test ride area. We're now offering cadence and torque sensors on our bikes. So what have you experienced with the bikes with cadence versus torque? Can you explain some of the differences in it that you've seen, and then maybe what your customers prefer?
Yeah, it's mixed. It's hard because I rather someone leave confused than buy a bike that they're not sure about. And I know it sounds weird, but you don't like to get bikes back just because they wanted to try. It's harder to return used bikes. But the sensors, so if you have somebody, it's a very hard market right now because there's the Aventons of the world that are going to survive and be there and are creating new designs and 2-year warranties and really honestly have the better looking bikes, better welds, better paint, better everything. And it is. And I'm a hard person to impress being an engineer. And I've seen everything. We repair everything. Not everybody gets the same treatment if they don't have an Aventon. It's not as easy to repair a lot of these bikes, but a lot of people don't know what they're buying. They'll bring in the $600 Amazon bike, and to them it was amazing. It's magic. Any bike for the first time you're on, it's electric is magic right off the bat. Right. And then once you start going down the internet, rabbit hole, you start finding out that there's a lot of bikes out there.
There's a lot of stuff.
To me, the Cadence sensors did very, very well. The bikes were, they went from throttle at pedal, to throttle on demand, and you kind of had a progression, and they got a little more integrated with the body. It's not very easy with a rear hub. And then, the torque sensors are fantastic. The bikes, they have, for some people, and it could be any bike, it's not an Aventon thing, they don't like the feeling like they don't have control, if that makes any sense. Like, when they start pedaling, the bike would take off, regardless if it's abrupt or it's very, really integrated with their body. So the Cadence sensors, the new bikes are just really nice and calm, and they feel better to the people. But most people don't know the difference. It's, you explain it to them and they don't know it unless you have one next to each other, which soon we probably won't have any next to each other. They'll be all, torque sensor based. They wouldn't know the difference anyways. And that's not being facetious with them. It's, if you don't have it to ride, you wouldn't know the difference. But I'm all for the Cadence sensors. I think, the torque sensors. I think they're great. Yeah. It's a great upgrade to the bike. And I think the motors will last longer. And I just think people, they like being able to tune their bikes a little bit too, better to, calm. And then if they want the power to take off.
Yeah. It just gives you that little bit more control over what happens with the bike. So a little bit more natural feeling.
Yeah, I agree.
But talking about our bikes, which Aventon bike is your favorite?
Oh boy, that's a tough one right now.
Depends on the day, right?
And it's the funny thing is, and I hope my wife is not tuned in right now, but I try to buy all the same color because they all blend together when you have 9 bikes. I'm not sure which the new ones come into the garage or my house. I like, so for just fun, I like the Cinch. I think it's such a great all around bike. We like to go to national parks and campgrounds and do stuff like that. So that bike is, it's just a do it all bike. The sportsmen love that bike. Guys who hunt, fish, hike, camp, they're at, the campgrounds. I think the golf cart is going to start going away. I think the Cinches is going to start replacing the golf cart because they can stick it in their camper, lock it up. There's not 6 batteries inside of it. Right. And it's a lot easier to get places. We sell a lot of Cinches to people that have boats and yachts. Mm-hmm. They'll come from, I'm very fortunate with the back marketing, but I get people from 200 to 300 miles away because we only do e-bikes, and they'll buy bikes. And I'm like, why did you pass up like 9 bike shops? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, we found you first in your service but they're using them to take them, fold them up, put them on boats and take them down along the ocean coast to get off, and they'll park and ride their bikes. So it's neat. People are training me what they're using for more than what I'm thinking. Sometimes you get blinders on at a bike shop and people give you new ideas, but I deviated from that. I think the Cinch is my favorite bike. But the Pace 500 is just always the most solid bike as far as for anybody, whether it's a step through or a top tube. So, but for me, I think it'd be for the playfulness of it, like little pit bike-ish. The Cinch is pretty cool. I like it. It's got more torque with a 20-inch tire too.
Yeah, it's sometimes really hard to pick which is the favorite. It
is. That's really, you kind of pull me out on that one because I don't want to. I like it, and then the Adventures too are great. I am in Southwest PA. There's so many outdoorsmen here, and I won't mention anything, but they're getting the wool pulled over their face with what bikes should cost, and then when you stick a camo pattern on it, what bikes cost. And it's ridiculous. I'll tell people like this bike is the same bike. It doesn't have that fancy, it doesn't have the outdoors name on it or the camo pattern, and this thing will do just as better. So the camo Adventure is really kicking pretty well here too.
Yeah. Super clean.
But the marketing makes it very hard. People go online and they look and they don't, that's not marketed as much to the outdoor community, the hunting, fishing community, sportsman community as some bikes, but they're starting to pick up on it. So we're starting to make headway there.
The word is getting out for sure.
Word is definitely getting out.
The before I go to the next question, I just want to kind of throw out a quick reminder for people that are watching. Just remember to drop any questions that you have for Steve or me in the comments section below, and then when we get a little bit closer to the end, we'll be switching over to that Q&A, the live Q&A part. Awesome. But back to you, Steve. What are some of the kind of general do's and don'ts that you have for winter riding in your area?
Oh man, that's tough. Because if you ask me, I'm a different breed when the winter comes as far as riding. Um, your typical stuff. A lot of people park their bikes for the winter. I don't think they understand that they'll be fine as long as you're not submerging them, or pressure. I always tell everybody don't pressure wash your bike. That's very hard in Southwest Pennsylvania because once they get off a dirt bike or an ATV, the pressure washer comes out. So there's an education there, but just there's a misconception that one bike will do everything sometimes. And it's unfortunate because there's usually a couple bikes that'll do a number of things. You get the guy comes in that wants to do rail to trail. He wants to go fishing with it. He also wants to do the single track up at the ski resort. And he wants something small he can fit in the back of his truck. And it doesn't exist. And I almost say, here's 2 bikes for you and I'll work you a deal. But I would say, as far as the battery maintenance, take the battery in the house. That's the first winter thing if you're not going to, run it. Make sure it's charged. But I mean, winter riding, we got a lot of people winter riding. Unfortunately, most of my clientele right now is 60 and older. There's not a lot of winter riding going on. We do. We've actually taken a bunch of Pace 500s and stuck more of an off-road tire on them. And a lot of people ride them around their farm and stuff. And there's no reason in the world why that bike can't have a different tire on it. Unless it's something you guys don't want to do. I highly doubt that. But something with a semi-aggressive tire, and they love it. And the kids, entry-level bike for a kid who just wants to ride around the trails can be very expensive with an off-road tire. So taking a Pace 500 and doing that with it, it's affordable for the parents. So that we've been doing a lot of that this winter is changing out the road tire, the semi all-terrain rail to trail tire and sticking a little more aggressive tire on the Pace 500s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thought, because we'll be circling back to that on one of the last questions. But yeah, we get that a lot with tire choice and stuff like that. That's a big one. But when it does start to warm up on the East Coast and spring starts kicking in, what steps do you recommend people take on their bike before they head out for their first springtime ride?
Well, and that's another thing too. A lot of people don't know how to maintain their bikes. At Jolt Bike, when we sell a bike, we do their first tune for free. So we always let them get, their ride under their belt. And then usually they'll come in, their first tune's the most major one, chain stretch, cable stretch, if they're not, mechanical brakes. We get loaded up with that pretty good here in the next month. But people, check their tire pressure. Everyone, just because it says 55 pounds or something on it doesn't mean that's what you have to run. You can run at adequate tire pressure for your body weight. You'll have a better ride.
Right.
If you're a 110-pound kid, it's different than 190-pound Steve. I'm going to put more pressure. Use typically a dry lube on your chain if you're not riding in the wet. Don't use black grease, which we get a lot of times. We get a lot of lithium grease, which just collects everything. Yeah. So clean the chain. Dry lube's recommended. Check your brakes, make sure your brakes are good. And just all around, just see if the bike's, in good shape. A lot of times we see people loosen tires up, take the QDs off or loosen one up and not tighten it back down in the winter because they had it stored. So, I mean, that's my big ones right now. But if it gets to, and we're about keeping people on the road and keeping them happy. So typically if someone just has something clicking, say our derailleur's clicking, we'll typically do it in the parking lot for them and send them on their way. So I hope shops understand it. It doesn't always require a charge. Sometimes people just don't know, and it's something really easy that you don't have to bring it in and hold it. Get them back on the trail is the goal with Jolt Bike.
Yeah, it might just need a couple turns of the adjuster, and that's it.
That's it. And I tried doing that over the phone. It just ends up worse. So just stop in real quick, and we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the main ones. Your brakes, your tires, and make sure everything's shifting fine. I think I get people back on the road quick.
Great advice. The safety is always a big thing, especially here at Aventon. We're big on safety things. Any general safety tips that you recommend to your riders?
A lot of times we coach a little bit on, which brake to hit first. You always want to kind of run with your rear and use your front if you have to. I think that's hard. And especially with mechanical brakes, you can feather them a little easier than death gripping a hydraulic brake. You're stopping, so when you hit the front brake with a hydraulic setup, it's more abrupt.
Mm.
I find a lot of people too, they want sometimes higher handlebars. They want to be more vertical. I am not a big fan of stem extensions because now you have 4 bolts, and I've seen people hit curbs and the wheel goes one way and the handlebar goes the other way.
Yeah.
Articulating stems like most of your bikes have, best way to do it. Take the stem up as high as you go, and you're still connected to that steerer tube or the front fork tube that goes through in a safe manner.
Right.
That's my biggest safety thing that I've seen, and I won't do it because I've seen too many accidents. But anything else safe, your tires are worn. You don't want to be seeing, any threads through there or any tubes.
Yeah.
And your brake pads. I would say your brake pads. I've seen a lot of people wash their bike and get a lot of lube or WD-40 on their brake pads. They won't stop at all.
Yeah.
Squilling pads are no fun to ride with either.
Yeah.
But those would be the two. The modifications of the bike we get sometimes are less than safe. So we won't let it go out of the shop with it not put back the way it should be.
How is Pennsylvania on helmet laws and stuff like that?
We're real lax. I mean, I wear helmets, so do my kids. I think there's a youth helmet law. Well, they recommend youth having helmets, but motorcycles don't have to wear helmets in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I believe the enforcing anything on the bikes is not happening right here. I don't think it is a law, but I would say up at the trail systems, I would say 80% of the people are wearing helmets.
That's good.
And mostly for the reason, a lot of them are buying the helmets with the lights in the back.
Yeah.
People don't pay attention on trails very often. Another safety thing is if you say coming up on your left, a lot of people don't know what that means when they're walking. They'll move left. So I always tell everybody, just ring your bell, let them make the decision, and then they can't yell at you when, when you're locking up and the people are in front of you. So, trail safety, just be cognizant. That's our biggest thing right now is trail safety. There's some guys that are flying through pretty quick, but 15 miles per hour it's fast on a gap trail. 20 miles per hour is really fast. I get a lot of people asking for 30-mile bikes, or they laugh when I say they caught off at 20. For class 1. So I think the realism of safety is speed on the trail is also something people just got to watch.
That's good. Good tips. Well, we'll move on to the frequently asked questions part. I've got 4 things that seem to kind of come up a lot that we deal with. The first one, how often do I need to clean the chain and what do I use? You mentioned seeing a lot of bikes coming in with grease on their chain. Grease is is a big no-no. You want to stick with the chain lubes, and definitely like that. Cleaning depends a lot on how often you ride, things like that, the areas that you ride. But the cleaner you can keep the chain, the better lubrication that you have on it, the longer it's going to last, the more enjoyable your riding experience is going to be. Do you get similar stuff in your area?
We do, yeah. The chain, your chain's like your brain there. You gotta, not always is a derailleur, a lot of chain stretch. You gotta watch for chain stretch on there. A lot of guys are really pushing the pedals hard or don't shift properly. They're using, 13 teeth instead of 42, and it's hard on the chain. Unless you're racing through mud and water, I would use a dry lubricant. Muck off. We use a lot of muck off here in the shop. Half the time we use, parts and brake cleaner for a degreaser, just as long as you cover everything and you don't get it on the rest of the bike and or the brake pads. But they do make some pretty cheap Park and Finish Line makes a lot of like chain cleaner things that you put the chain on. You put your fluid into it, you run the chain and it cleans your whole chain for you. $15, a home user could clean their chain pretty easily without taking it to the shop if they don't have to.
There's even some lubes that I've seen that have a cleaner lubricant combo. So, it's usually best if you're keeping on top of it and not letting it get too dirty. You can use something like that and take care of both steps at one time.
Yeah, I agree. And just this normal grease, WD-40, stuff like that is just not, you just don't want to pick up all the road mess and all the cinder and the limestone and everything. It's just going to wear your bike out real quick.
Right. Right. So another question that we get a lot, and you started touching on it. What is the widest tire that will fit my bike? Uh,
Which
well,
bike?
yeah, it depends on the bike always, and it also depends on the tire a lot. So that's why that's a really tough question to
It
answer,
is.
because if you say, like, say you're talking about a level bike, and somebody wants to get like a mountain bike style tire on there, well,
Mhm.
one brand's 2.6 is not the same as another brand's 2.6.
Correct.
So you might find some that do fit and some that won't fit. It depends on the tread design. It depends, on the width of the wheel, things like that.
Yeah,
So it's not just a cut and dry answer. So
I agree.
what you mentioned on paces, is that the bike that you get the most tire changes on?
Typically, yeah, we'll get. Now we've had 2.5 and 2.4s on there. We've even had 2.6, but it was a Goodyear tire. And you're right. We you don't know a tire until you buy a bunch of them. So I'll buy randoms, change a pace out a few times, and then check and see the clearance,
Right.
because a lot of people think they can fit in as wide as they can. When you are on your bike, your wheel is actually flexing.
We'll
If it
move
didn't
away.
flex, it would break. So on mountain bikes, you see a lot of space between the tire and the rear dropouts or the front fork. It's because your wheel will move a half an inch when you're cornering. Now that doesn't happen on the gap trail or railroad trail, but 2.6 will be pushing it. We're usually 2.4, 2.5.
Yeah.
We've had good luck with Goodyear tires, um, and it just all depends. It just all depends on the bike. Like, I mean, the Adventure and the Cinch, 4 inches fantastic. Going any better, you're just killing any bigger, you're working your battery,
Mm.
and you're asking for more punctures because that's more surface area you just don't need. So
And for those size tires, there aren't a ton of options for different widths like there are in, say, a
no,
27.5 or a 26-inch mountain bike tire.
right,
You have a lot of options there, but for the 20 by 4 or the 26 by 4, there's not a whole lot.
no, there's
Even
not.
though they're popular sizes, everybody pretty much sticks with the same width.
Yeah, it's a trial and error. Once you get that tire, we just always offer an upgrade cost and put them on. But the bike looks nice when you take like a sand color or a black and you stick the semi aggressive off road tires. It looks sharp.
Looks
It
really
changes the
sharp.
bike totally. Yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah. But the I think now I'll skip a couple of the FAQ questions and take some of the live Q&A. We're starting to get a couple good questions on here. So from one of our YouTube viewers, how do you avoid the road salt?
I
Do
say
you get
leave
a
your
lot
bike
of
in the
road salt
basement.
in the wintertime? What's that?
I say leave your bike in the basement.
Yeah.
Um, we are in Southwest Pennsylvania. I think road salt is pretty much a staple here.
Okay.
So I don't think you can avoid it. Um, just because we're throwing cinders and road salt all the time. Will it mess with your bike? Yes. Not as bad as being at the beach. That's the worst. Just in the air will start rusting your chain. Road salt's not bad, but when
Okay.
you get home, I would take it into a semi-heated area and I would just lightly hose it off and dry it. As long
Mm.
as you get it off, you'll be fine. It's when it sits there for a while, it'll start corroding into your chain and stuff. But beach bikes, we get them in there. I would take a PA road salt bike any day of the week from a beach bike.
From a beach
Um,
bike, yeah.
but it's going to take a little bit of water to clean it off. I don't think there's any way to get around it other than not riding. I mean, your connectors are all, we stick dielectric grease on all of our connectors. So there's nothing getting in there as long as you leave your battery on. I would say in the wintertime too, travel with your battery on unless you can't lift the bike. The connectors down in there, all that grime eats and sits down in that hole for the battery. I'd
Right.
rather keep that battery in there and keep that cleaner than just let all the particulates sit inside there.
Right.
Especially in the winter or when it's raining or hard or snowing.
Cool. So just a nice gentle wash with a hose, nothing pressurized. Keep
No.
it clean, keep it dry.
Yep.
Good,
Yep. That's what I would do.
good tips. Now, from another YouTube viewer, what PSI do you recommend for the cinch?
See, that's so relative. That's tough. If you're trying to get more miles out of the bike, and it depends on your body weight,
Hmm.
you're going to want a little bit of higher pressure. You want to ride more on the bowl of the tire. If you're getting off a little bit, say at your campground, take some out of it. I mean, sometimes I run mountain bike tires at 18 psi in muddy conditions.
Hmm.
Um, But on that tire, I would say, I don't know. It depends on body weight. 30, 35 pounds isn't real bad. I mean, you can even go a little lower than that. You
Yeah.
just don't want to squish down to the point to where um, you're getting in trouble if you're going to hit a pothole or you're going to hit a curb. You don't want to, you don't want to pinch flat anything. So it's very relative. But there is, I always say go up to the point to where you don't get a lot of squish on the tire, and it
Mhm.
takes some out, because it's going to feel like a rock hard if you have. I don't know what the max psi is in a cinch.
It's
Should
30 on some of them, 20 on the others, but yeah, for the most part, I typically recommend 20 on the cinch, kind of just an average 15 to 20.
Yeah,
If it's a lighter person,
I think I was
but not
crossing
much.
over with a Pace 500 tire. Sorry.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, lower the better. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's get a better ride out of it.
yeah, it's a nice cushy ride. If like you say, if you're not trying to be super efficient and get the most miles and stuff,
Yeah,
cover as much distance as possible on the battery charge, and then you can
we
let a little bit more air out and use it as kind of like a secondary suspension or something. But
we usually do it for them. They come in, they'll ask us like, where am I at with this tire, and we'll set it up for them until they feel comfortable with the ride, and
yeah,
tune the whole bike. We did have a level one time that on the tire was stamped, I think it was 70 pounds.
yeah,
And we had a couple blow offs.
yeah.
70 is usually never going to happen, just to let
No.
someone know that. No, I don't even know of a road tire to go 70. So more is not better.
Yeah, we had a couple misprints on some of the tires, and yeah, on the level, it's like 50 is max.
Yeah.
Keep it. Average is probably 35 to 40. For most people,
Yeah.
but yeah, the another question from Sharon on Facebook about tire pressure. She has an adventure, and she's asking about riding on the snow. Have you ever ridden an adventure on the snow?
I have not yet. No. I have ridden my fat bike, which is a 4-inch fat tire in the snow. And they're just like anything other bike. The fat tire does give you, it's a love or hate. So sometimes skinny tire will go down deeper in the snow. So like a Pace 500 may get you more traction in the snow, but the 500 is just super fun, or the adventure is just super fun in the snow.
Mm,
Um, I would probably run a little bit lower pressure, like on the sand, if you're going to get on the beach too, just because it's
right.
got a grab.
Mm.
But sometimes there's a misnomer. Sometimes the balloon tires are not the better in snow. A skinny Pace 500 tire with aggressive would grip. Off roaders will tell you this, will grip in better in the snow. But the bikes do just fine. I'm not sure how crazy she wants to get with the bike, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Just be
snow.
careful. Yeah,
Yeah, keep your feet down. The snow's never. I mean, we all wreck in the snow. It's not exactly the most optimal to do it.
yeah,
And I would keep. I don't know if I'd bury the motor under the snow for a long time either. The motor. I wanted to say this too. The motor, it gets warm. It contracts and expands. So
mm,
even though it's sort of water resistant, proofish, water will get pulled in that cable if it sits there for a while once it melts. So you got to be careful with snow.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, make sure like after you're riding, clean off the bike just like you would with salt or
yep.
sand or anything like that,
Yep.
just to keep it from accumulating. But definitely good tips. Another one from Facebook. What's a good list of things I need or should prep for before going out for a ride?
Well,
Another
you go for it first, because I got one idea.
that's a real good subjective one, and maybe it's
It is.
different. I'm in California and you're in Pennsylvania, so we can add. It depends on the weather. It depends on what's going on and how long and far you're going to ride. But I'd say the basic things. Always carry a spare tube, the tools you need to change a flat, make a flat repair if you have that. I always like to carry a basic multi-tool, which is going to have the Allen wrenches and screwdrivers that are common. A couple zip ties are always great to have with you, and maybe even a flat repair. So if you do end up using, a patch kit. So if you
Yeah.
end up using your tube and then you get another flat, you'll have the option of using the patch kit to repair one of those two tubes, get yourself back on the road. A pump, always pump or CO2s, depending on the size of your tire. Um, those are always great things. Anything that you would put on your must-have list?
No, I think you nailed it. Zip ties are good because you can put things up that are falling off without having screwdrivers a lot of times.
Right.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, no, tire levers, patch kit, tube, a small little pump. You'll pump more, but you'll like not having something heavy. Although I want to give props out to the Aventon battery powered pump. The Fantic one. That is unreal.
That's a
We
game
sell those
changer
quite a
for
bit.
those
That's a game
adventures.
changer. When
Yeah.
we go do service for some of the rental companies, we take them with us. I'm not
Mhm.
sitting there all day pumping a pump. It is fantastic. But I don't know if I'd carry one with me unless I was going on a really big ride. But yeah, I think that gets you number one. I mean, learning some basic knowledge on how to change a tire. Although, unless you're really by yourself, most of the trail systems, 99% of the time, someone will stop and help you if you've never done it before.
Right.
Check for thorns before you put the tube back in. Take your fingers around the inside so you're not wasting two tubes right away.
Right. Make sure
Um,
that you've removed that obstruct or whatever it is that caused the flat.
yeah,
Make sure it's no longer in the tire. So,
yeah, and make sure you have. Schrader Presta pump. You might have a Presta only end with a Schrader. On some of the Aventons. I think everything's Schrader on Aventons, correct?
the
Presta on
Solterra
some?
has a Presta.
The Solterra has a Presta. Okay. So just know the difference. Usually most pumps have a little flipper thingy in the end that you can change your pump over.
Yeah.
But no, the CO2 cartridges are really nice. It depends how big the tire is. I haven't tried the CO2, a full fat tire
Oh,
on an Aventon yet. I don't know if it will make it. I'm not sure it will.
you might go through 4 or 5.
You might need a can of Fix a Flat from
Yeah.
a full truck. But yeah, be prepared for small things like that. If it's more major than that, typically you can ride your bike without the battery if something would go bad or push it. I hate to say it, but it's a bike.
Yeah.
Underneath it's a bike with a motor and a battery.
Keep your cell phone with you.
Keep your cell phone with you and don't make anybody mad that may
Yeah.
have to help you later on down the road.
Right. Last one from Peter on Facebook. Which bike would you recommend from trail to road? So of all the Aventon bikes, which is your favorite for from going from trail to road?
So trail, does he mean like mountain bike, single track trail to road? Like a crossover bike?
I guess you could take it either way, from trail to road.
Or just an all around bike, maybe he's saying.
Yeah, bikes are kind of, you get a lot of questions like that. Is it okay if I take a pace, on a dirt trail, or is it okay if I take my adventure on a mountain bike trail or something like that? A lot of the answers to those for me, it's like, well, it depends on your skill level, and then what how the bike is equipped and what you're prepared for. You can take any bike on pretty much anything you want to do, but the bikes are made for a specific type of characteristic of riding. So they might, you take a beach cruiser on a mountain bike trail, you can do it. It's not going to be the best tool for the job, but, and it just depends on your level of commitment for it. But yeah, if you can ride anything you want safely on the trail or the road, but some of the bikes are going to do it better than others. So bikes like the Adventure, it's got the knobbies on it. Some of the cinches came with knob tires on them. So those and the wider tires, you're going to get better traction in slippery situations and stuff like that. So those are more initially inclined towards light duty trail work. You mentioned putting a mountain bike type tire on a level or a pace. Anything like that, you can increase the level of difficulty on the trail that you might go on just with the right equipment and the right skill level to handle that type of road surface.
Yeah, the Pace 500 has just been. We have a huge GNCC motocross and ECXC. Like, there's hundreds of e-bikes there because they pit, and you're allowed to preview the track with an e-bike. You're not allowed to take any gas device on it. So everyone has an e-bike. A couple $100,000 camper and an e-bike is pretty much standard at the motocross races. So they're starting to see that the Pace, they don't need to buy their child who does not mountain bike race or need a $5,000 or $10,000 specialized, not to say any names, but that's prevalent there. So they can get a Pace and put a little knobby tire on it and just use it and not break the bank. And they're starting to see that they don't have to have full suspension bikes to preview stuff. So they're starting to pick up there. But that bike, the Pace 500, just the way the build quality is on it, I wouldn't do anything, it's crazy single track. It's just not what that bike's made for, but it will do off-road to a certain extent.
Right.
Even the level, if you want racks and you're doing something, if you're bike packing and you're going to get off-road a little bit, that bike is so set up for the price. You don't need much else to buy on that bike unless you would change tires or get your bags and stuff. There's nothing that beats the prices as of right now on the level, the way it's loaded up.
Yeah, it comes equipped with everything almost. So
yeah, definitely. But yeah, I don't know if I had to pick one, the most versatile bike I have seen out of Aventon. It'd probably be the Pace 500 because you could just do just about anything with it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You get more specific with the cinch and the adventure and the level. I think that the Pace 500 is the killer.
Yeah, for me, I think my pick for trying to get everything in one quiver would be the level would be my favorite. I'd probably maybe take the fenders off of it and the rack because it's not too often that I find myself needing to carry that stuff. And I'd throw
I'm the same way.
throw some mountain bike tires on it, and you've got yourself
Yep.
a nice little, you know, hardtail almost. So
It's exactly, yeah. It's a super solid bike, and they look good too.
yeah, you could ride it on any road or mountain, and you know, and even hit a few trails on the way.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't tell you online here what some people do with their Pace 500s with the off-road tires and mountain bike. All I know is they're still. You would think rental places. We rent bikes at the Hiopile and at the resort. And I think rentals. It's hard for me. I'm going to start doing rentals, but I'm going to have to get a thicker skin because people are not nice with rentals. And when we repair them, I look at bikes that have been ridden by someone in their town, and I look at Aventons and how, not in a bad way, they are just abused. And we put very little effort into getting those bikes up. And this is the second year they're going through rentals, and the other place is the third year. They really take a beating. And I don't mean that, and we're trying to do that. Just people, when they rent bikes, the expectations of taking care of them are just has to be thrown away. But they are the choice of rental fleets in our area right now. They really hold up very, very well. Very well.
Well, awesome. Steve, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on Coffee and Go.
Absolutely.
And thanks for giving us the opportunity to learn more about your shop. Jolt Bike sounds awesome. And everybody in our audience, thank you all for all the great questions. And if you're in Waltersburg, Pennsylvania, make sure you swing by Jolt Bike and say hi to Steve and his crew.
That's the real Jolt Bike.
Look at the view right there. That's awesome.
Here's a sneak peek. These are not colors you'll find at Aventon, but they are Aventons.
Wow. That's an awesome selection.
Oh, the bike's awesome. But I appreciate you guys having me too. It's been a pleasure working with you guys and your staff, and Angelo and Carly. They've been unbelievable. I'm sure some dealers watching will know who I'm talking about.
Awesome. Well, upcoming events for Aventon this summer, we'll be hosting several group rides at different locations across the U.S. Some locations that we have right now will be in California, Utah, New York, Colorado, Arizona, and Florida. So stay tuned to all of our social media channels for more detailed information and dates coming soon. So that concludes this episode of Coffee and Go. Thank you all for joining us, and remember to follow us on social media so you get all the latest news and information, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.